He offered me millions to be his wife. I said yes, but not for the money. I said yes for the heartbroken little boy standing behind him, and the chance to be a mother I thought I'd lost forever. I just never expected to fall in love with the man who couldn't love me back, or so I thought. Welcome back to CJ Stories, where we bring you emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul. If you're just joining us for the first time, you're welcome to this wonderful big family. We're so glad to have you here. Please make sure to watch till the end, and if today's story moves you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share this video with your family and loved ones. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rain hammered against the windows of Meadowbrook Elementary as Chen gathered the last of the crayon drawings from her kindergarten classroom. 22 smiling stick-figure families stared back at Henny. I know this week has been hard. With the anniversary and all. Emma nodded. 5 years since the accident that took her fiancé, David. 5 years since her dreams of a family dissolved in a moment of screeching tires and shattered glass. The doctors had been blunt after her injuries. Natural pregnancy would be nearly impossible. Adoption as a single teacher with mounting medical debt? The agencies had been equally blunt. I'm fine, Emma lied, the words as familiar as breathing. After Margaret left, Emma locked up and hurried to her second job at the Celestial, the city's most exclusive restaurant where she waitressed on weekends. She needed every penny she could earn. The Celestial was packed as usual, filled with people who spent more on one meal than Emma made in a week. She was refilling water glasses when she heard the crash. A small boy, no more than 4 years old, had knocked over a vase. He stood frozen in the spreading puddle, his lower lip trembling as a sharp-faced woman in designer clothes bore down on him. You clumsy, stupid child, the nanny hissed. Emma didn't think, she just moved, stepping between them and kneeling to the boy's level. Hey there, sweetheart. Accidents happen. Are you okay? Did any glass get on you? Wide gray eyes stared at her, then filled with tears. The boy threw his small arms around her neck. Get away from my nephew. The voice was arctic, commanding. Emma looked up, and up, into the coldest eyes she'd ever seen. The man towering over her was devastating, sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back, a suit that probably cost more than her car. But his eyes were frozen wastelands. Alexander Hunt. She recognized him from magazines. Billionaire tech mogul. The man who'd revolutionized AI technology before he was 30. Now, at 36, he was one of the most powerful men in the country. I was just helping, Emma began. I didn't ask for your assistance. He looked at the nanny. You're fired. Leave. The woman paled and fled. Emma stood slowly, anger replacing her initial shock. She was berating a child. A scared little boy who had an accident. How I handle my staff is none of your concern. He lifted the boy with surprising gentleness, despite his harsh tone. The child buried his face in Alexander's shoulder. Maybe if you hired people who actually cared about him instead of, you know nothing about my situation. His voice could have flash-frozen the sun. Return to your work. Emma bit back her retort and walked away, hands shaking. But she watched them throughout the evening. The little boy barely touched his food. Alexander worked on his phone, barely looking at the child. And something in Emma's chest cracked at the loneliness radiating from that small figure. She didn't expect to see Alexander Hunt standing in the restaurant's parking lot 2 hours later, waiting beside her beat-up Honda. Miss Chen. Emma Chen. She gripped her keys. How did you know which car? I know many things, Miss Chen. He paused. I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested in. I need a wife, he said flatly, as if discussing a business acquisition. And unless I'm very much mistaken, you need a child. Emma's breath caught. Excuse me? I saw how you looked at my nephew. I looked into your background. You investigated me? He continued as if she hadn't spoken. Former teacher of the year. Engaged once, fiancé deceased. Medical history that complicates natural pregnancy. Multiple rejected adoption applications. Student loans, medical debt, working 2 jobs. He tilted his head. Did I miss anything? Fury and humiliation burned through her. You have no right? I have every right. My nephew, Ethan, his parents, my brother and sister-in-law, died 3 months ago. Car accident. I'm his only living relative. Something flickered in those frozen eyes. I'm also utterly unequipped to raise a child. My company requires constant travel. I work 18-hour days. The nannies keep quitting because Ethan won't speak to them. He hasn't spoken to anyone since his parents died. Emma's anger faltered. That poor baby. Indeed. Alexander's jaw tightened. Child Services has concerns about my ability to provide adequate care. I need to demonstrate stability. A wife. A proper home environment. In return, I can offer you what you want, a child to raise. Ethan needs someone who actually understands children. Someone kind. This is insane. This is practical. He pulled out a business card. Come to my office Monday at 6 p.m. I'll have my lawyers draft a contract. You'll have full access to raise Ethan, unlimited resources, your debts cleared, and a generous salary. After 2 years, if we both agree, we can divorce. You'll receive a settlement sufficient to adopt on your own if you choose. You're talking about a child, not a business deal. I'm talking about saving my nephew from foster care, Alexander said coldly. I'm talking about giving him what he needs and giving you what you want. Think about it, Miss Chen. How long will it take you to save enough to adopt on your own? How many years? How many agencies will reject you? I'm offering you a child who needs you right now. He walked away, disappearing into a black Mercedes that probably cost more than Emma would make in 5 years. Emma stood in the parking lot, rain beginning to fall again, staring at the business card in her trembling hand. What would you do if you were Emma? Would you accept this cold billionaire's shocking proposal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're hooked on this story, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Monday evening found Emma standing before a glass tower in the heart of the city's financial district. Hunt Technologies occupied the top 15 floors. She'd changed outfits 5 times, finally settling on a simple navy dress that made her feel slightly less out of her depth. She'd spent the entire weekend arguing with herself. This was crazy. You couldn't contract marriage like hiring a contractor. You couldn't decide to raise a child based on a business arrangement. But then she'd think of those wide gray eyes. That small, lonely figure. A little boy who'd lost everything. And if she was honest, deeply, painfully honest, she'd think about her empty apartment, her empty arms, the decades stretching ahead with neither. Miss Chen? A sleek receptionist gestured toward a private elevator. Mr. Hunt is expecting you. The elevator opened directly into an office that was more like a penthouse suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city glittering below. Everything was steel, glass, and sharp edges. Like the man rising from behind the massive desk. You came. Alexander sounded almost surprised. I came to talk. Not to agree. Understood. He gestured to a sitting area where a woman in her 50s waited with a stack of documents. This is Patricia Holloway, my attorney. For the next hour, they reviewed the most surreal contract Emma had ever seen. It laid out everything. They would marry within 2 weeks. Emma would live in Alexander's home and have primary custody of Ethan. She would receive a monthly salary of $15,000, all her debts would be paid immediately, and she could quit her jobs to focus on Ethan full-time. The marriage will be in name only, Patricia explained delicately. Separate bedrooms, no? Marital expectations. Emma's cheeks burned, but Alexander's expression remained carved from ice. After 2 years, you may divorce with a settlement of $5 million. If Ethan's well-being requires it, you may both remain in the family home until he's 18, with continued financial support. This is? Emma couldn't find words. Generous, Patricia supplied. Insane, Emma corrected. Perhaps. Alexander spoke for the first time. But necessary. Ethan's caseworker visits next month. If I can't demonstrate a stable, nurturing environment, he goes into the system while they search for appropriate placement. He's already lost his parents. I won't let him lose his family entirely. It was the first real emotion Emma had heard from him. Not warmth, exactly, but something beneath the ice. Desperation, maybe. Love, buried deep. Why me? Emma asked. You could have anyone. Someone from your world, who understands. I watched you with him. Alexander's gaze pinned her. For 30 seconds, you made my nephew feel safe. That's something I apparently cannot do. 23 nannies, Miss Chen. All qualified. All experienced. None of them could reach him. He's grieving. He's drowning, and I don't know how to throw him a lifeline. The admission seemed dragged from somewhere painful. You do. Emma looked at the contract. At the figure that would erase her debt, that would give her the family she'd mourned for 5 years. At the little boy who needed someone. I want to meet with Ethan first. Really meet with him. And if I agree to any of this, I have conditions. Name them. Ethan comes first. Always. Every decision we make prioritizes his well-being. And I want to be his parent, not his nanny. That means I get equal say in his upbringing. Agreed. And we tell him the truth. Age appropriately, but the truth. No lies. Alexander hesitated, then nodded. Anything else? Yes. Emma met his frozen gaze steadily. You have to actually try to be his uncle. His family. I know you're busy, but he needs you. Not just your money or your name. You. For a long moment, something almost like pain crossed Alexander's face. I'm not good with children. Then learn. Emma softened slightly. I'll help you. But he's already lost his parents. He can't have an uncle who's just a ghost who pays the bills. I'll try. The words were stiff, but Emma sensed the promise beneath them. When can I see Ethan? Now, if you'd like. He's downstairs with the current nanny. 20 minutes later, Emma sat in a cheerful playroom that seemed oddly out of place in the sterile building. Ethan huddled in the corner, building blocks scattered around him, ignored. The nanny looked exhausted. Ethan? Emma sat down several feet away, giving him space. I'm Emma. We met the other night, remember? When the vase fell? The small boy looked at her, those gray eyes, so like his uncle's but full of hurt instead of ice, wary. Emma pulled out her phone. I brought something to show you. These are drawings from my students. This one's from Sophie, she really likes dinosaurs. And this one's from Marcus, he wants to be an astronaut. Slowly, so slowly, Ethan crept closer. Emma kept talking, soft and gentle, showing him pictures, telling him silly stories about 5-year-olds. And then, miracle of miracles, Ethan climbed into her lap. He still didn't speak. But he pulled Emma's arms around him and laid his head against her chest, and Emma felt something lock into place in her heart. From the doorway, unnoticed, Alexander watched. His expression was unreadable, but his hand pressed against the glass as if reaching for something he'd forgotten how to touch. That night, Emma signed the contract. 2 weeks later, in a civil ceremony with only Patricia and Margaret as witnesses, Emma Chen became Emma Hunt. And the day after that, she moved into Alexander's mansion with her 3 suitcases of belongings, ready to become a mother to a boy who wasn't hers and a wife to a man who'd made it clear he didn't believe in love. The first night, she tucked Ethan into bed in a room adjoining hers. He still hadn't spoken, but he held her hand tight. It's okay to be sad, Emma whispered. It's okay to miss your mommy and daddy. I'm not trying to replace them. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise. Ethan's grip tightened. As Emma returned to her own room, a suite larger than her entire former apartment, she found a note slipped under her door. Thank you for making him smile today. I'd forgotten what that looked like. Emma held the note, looking out at the sprawling grounds visible from her window, and wondered what she'd really agreed to. Do you think Emma made the right choice? Can a marriage of convenience ever become something real? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see how this unconventional family develops. The first month was harder than Emma had imagined. The mansion was beautiful but cold, all modern architecture and expensive emptiness. Alexander left before dawn and returned after dark. When he was home, he retreated to his office. Emma saw him for perhaps 20 minutes a day, usually stiff exchanges about Ethan's schedule or the upcoming caseworker visit. But Ethan was beginning to bloom. He still didn't speak, but he laughed, silently, but genuinely, when Emma made silly faces or read stories with dramatic voices. He held her hand on walks through the grounds. He drew pictures and left them on her pillow. And slowly, the hollowness in his eyes began to fill with something like hope. Emma transformed the cold mansion room by room. She added throw pillows and warm blankets. She hung Ethan's artwork on the refrigerator. She baked cookies that made the kitchen smell like a home instead of a showpiece. Alexander noticed. She could tell by the way he'd pause in doorways, looking almost confused by the changes. Once, she caught him studying a crayon drawing Ethan had made, 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one small. He drew you in the picture, Emma said softly. Alexander's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but he didn't remove the drawing from where Ethan had placed it on the hallway table. The breaking point came 5 weeks into their arrangement. Emma woke at 2 a.m. to screaming. She ran to Ethan's room and found him tangled in his sheets, sobbing in the grip of a nightmare. She gathered him close, rocking him, murmuring comfort. Shoo, sweetheart. You're safe. I've got you. You're safe. She didn't notice Alexander in the doorway until Ethan finally calmed and fell back asleep in her arms. Emma looked up to find her husband watching them, something raw and broken in his expression. Does this happen often? His voice was rough. 3 or 4 times a week. Usually, I get to him before he fully wakes up. I didn't know. Your room is on the other side of the house. Alexander flinched as if she'd struck him. He stepped into the room, staring at his nephew's sleeping face. My brother used to have nightmares. When we were children. I would. He stopped. You would what? Emma prompted gently. I would sleep on his floor. So he'd know he wasn't alone. Alexander's hands clenched. I don't know how to do this. When I look at him, I see Marcus. My brother. And the fact that I couldn't save him. His voice cracked. Actually cracked. The Ice King was breaking. Emma shifted Ethan in her arms and stood. You can't save someone from a car accident, Alexander. It's not your fault. I should have. What? Seen the future? Stopped a drunk driver you didn't know existed. Emma's voice was firm but kind. You're Ethan's uncle, not God. You can't prevent every tragedy. But you can be here for him now. I don't know how. Then learn. Sit with him tomorrow morning at breakfast. Ask about his day. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. How are you so good at this? I'm not. I'm terrified I'll screw up every single day. Emma's smile was sad. But I love him. That's enough to start with. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Without a word, he left. Emma thought she'd pushed too hard. But the next morning, when she brought Ethan down for breakfast, Alexander was there. Not in his usual suit, but in jeans and a sweater. Not on his phone, but sitting at the table with 3 plates of pancakes. I don't know if I made them right, he said stiffly. Cooking isn't my skill set. They were burned on one side and undercooked on the other. Ethan poked his uncertainly. Emma took a huge bite. Best pancakes I've ever had. Ethan giggled, actually giggled, and took a bite too, making an exaggerated face that said they were terrible. Alexander's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. It became their routine. Alexander started coming down for breakfast every morning. At first, he was awkward, clearly uncomfortable. But Emma would tease him gently, and Ethan would watch his uncle with growing curiosity instead of fear. Then came the afternoon. Emma found Alexander in his office, head in his hands, staring at his laptop. What's wrong? He looked up, and she was startled to see something like helplessness on his face. Ethan's birthday is in 2 weeks. He'll be 5. His first birthday without? He couldn't finish. I don't know what to do. What he'd like. What's appropriate for a child his age? Emma sat down across from him. What did you do for his birthday last year? I sent a check and a card. I was in Tokyo on business. Alexander's voice was flat with self-recrimination. I was always on business. Always too busy. And now Marcus and Jennifer are gone, and I can't ask them. His voice caught. Impulsively, Emma reached across the desk and took his hand. His fingers were cold, stiff. But after a moment, they curled around hers. We'll figure it out together, she said softly. What did your brother like at that age? Dinosaurs. Space. Building things. The faintest smile crossed Alexander's face. He wanted to be a paleontologist, astronaut, architect. Sounds like Ethan has good genes. Emma squeezed his hand. Let's throw him the best dinosaur space building party ever. Here, at home, small and safe. Just us and maybe a few kids from the neighborhood. I don't know how to plan a children's party. Lucky for you, you married a teacher. Emma grinned. I know exactly how to plan a children's party. But Alexander, he'd probably just be happy if you were there. Really there. Present. I'll clear my schedule entirely. And he did. The next 2 weeks, Emma watched in amazement as Alexander transformed. He researched dinosaurs so he could answer Ethan's questions. He bought building sets and spent evenings on the floor, awkwardly but determinedly helping his nephew construct elaborate structures. He came home earlier. He was there for dinner. And slowly, so slowly, Ethan began to respond. He'd bring Alexander drawings. He'd climb into his uncle's lap during movie time. And once, miraculously, when Alexander had to take a business call, Ethan waited by the office door until he was done. He missed you, Emma said softly. Alexander looked at his nephew with wonder, as if seeing him for the first time. I missed him too. The birthday party was perfect in its imperfection. The dinosaur cake Emma baked was lopsided. Alexander's attempt at decorating resulted in streamers tangled everywhere. The 3 neighborhood children Emma had invited were loud and chaotic. But Ethan laughed. Real, audible laughter that rang through the house like bells. And then, as Alexander handed him a wrapped gift, a telescope for their budding astronaut, Ethan whispered his first words in 3 months. Thank you, Uncle Alex. Alexander froze. Emma saw tears, actual tears, in his eyes. He pulled Ethan into a fierce hug. You're welcome, buddy. You're so welcome. That night, after Ethan was asleep and the house was clean, Emma found Alexander on the terrace, looking out at the stars. Thank you, he said quietly. For giving him back to me. For giving me back to him. You did that yourself. No. You showed me how. He turned to her, and for the first time, his eyes weren't cold. They were warm. Grateful. And something else Emma was afraid to name. Emma, His phone rang. He glanced at it, conflicted. Take it, Emma said, even though part of her desperately wanted to hear what he'd been about to say. But something had shifted. The ice was breaking. And Emma was terrified to realize she was falling for her husband. Is Emma falling in love? And what about Alexander? Are his feelings changing too? Let us know what you think in the comments. And subscribe to follow this emotional journey. 3 months into their marriage, Emma had almost forgotten it was supposed to be temporary. The mansion had become a home. Ethan was thriving, talking more each day, sleeping through most nights, even asking to start kindergarten at Emma's old school. The caseworker had visited twice and seemed genuinely impressed by the warm, stable environment. And Alexander? Alexander had transformed from the Ice King into something Emma had never expected. He still worked hard, but he came home for dinner. He read Ethan bedtime stories. He'd even started smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached his eyes and made Emma's heart skip beats. They developed their own rhythm. Coffee together in the mornings while Ethan ate breakfast. Quiet conversations after Ethan went to bed. Stolen glances that lasted too long. Hands brushing when they both reached for the same thing. They hadn't touched the separate bedrooms clause. But Emma had caught Alexander looking at her sometimes with an intensity that made her breath catch. And she knew she'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with her husband. She just didn't know how he felt. Everything shattered on a Tuesday. Emma was at the mansion, planning a surprise dinner, when Alexander's assistant called. "Mrs. Hunt? Mr. Hunt asked me to let you know he'll be home late. He's having dinner with Vivian Cross." Emma's blood went cold. Vivian Cross, tech heiress, beautiful, brilliant, and according to every tabloid, Alexander's ex-girlfriend. The woman everyone had expected him to marry before he'd shocked the world by marrying an unknown schoolteacher. Oh, of course. Thank you. Emma told herself she was being ridiculous. It was probably just business. Alexander had been nothing but honorable. This was an arrangement, remember? A contract. But when he came home at midnight, smelling faintly of expensive perfume, Emma's heart crumbled. How was dinner? She kept her voice carefully neutral. Fine. Just business. But he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. The distance returned. For the next week, Alexander was polite but remote. He took more calls in his office. He came home later. And Emma felt the walls going back up between them. Then came the morning she overheard his phone call. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She'd just been passing his office when she heard Vivian's name. "I understand your position," Alexander said, his voice tight. "Yes, the arrangement has been beneficial. Ethan is doing well. But you're right that we need to think long-term. I know what we agreed." "Yes, I remember the timeline. 2 years, then we reassess." Emma didn't wait to hear more. She fled, each word a knife to her heart. Of course. Of course he was already planning their exit. This was always temporary. She was the fool for forgetting, for letting herself feel, for falling in love with a man who'd been perfectly clear this was just a transaction. That afternoon, Margaret called with a job opportunity, a principal position at a new school across the country. Good pay, great benefits, starting in 6 months. 6 months. Right around when she and Alexander had agreed to reassess their arrangement. "Can I think about it?" Emma asked. "Of course, honey. But Emma, are you okay? You sound off." "I'm fine," Emma lied, the words bitter and familiar. She didn't tell Alexander about the job offer. Instead, she began quietly preparing. She researched apartments in the new city. She started emotionally bracing herself to say goodbye to Ethan, even though the thought made her want to shatter. But Ethan noticed something was wrong. "Are you sad, Emma?" he asked one evening, his small face worried. "No, sweetheart. I'm fine. You look like Uncle Alex used to look. Before. Like you're far away." "Oh, this beautiful, perceptive child. I'm right here," Emma promised, pulling him close. "I'm not going anywhere." But it was a lie, and she hated herself for it. The explosion came 2 weeks later. Emma was packing some of her old teaching supplies, things she'd need if she took the job, when Alexander walked into her room without knocking. "What are you doing?" "Just organizing." "Don't lie to me." His voice was sharp. "You've been pulling away for weeks. You barely talk to me. You disappear into your room the moment Ethan's in bed. What's going on?" "What's going on?" Emma's control snapped. "What's going on is that I forgot the rules. I forgot this was temporary. I forgot that you're just waiting for the contract to end so you can go back to your real life." "What are you talking about?" "I heard you. On the phone with Vivian. Talking about timelines and reassessing and how this arrangement has been beneficial." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. "I knew better. I knew this was just a business deal. But I fell in love with that little boy, and I." She cut herself off, but it was too late. "And you what?" Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet. "Nothing. Forget it." "You what, Emma?" "I fell in love with you too, okay?" The words burst out. I fell in love with you, and I know that's not part of the contract, and I know you don't feel the same way, and I know I'm just the convenient solution until you can be with someone from your world like Vivian, so I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending this doesn't hurt. Silence. Horrible, endless silence. Then Alexander laughed. Actually laughed, but it was a broken, painful sound. You think I want Vivian? You think this has been pretend? You're on the phone with her constantly. You have dinner with her. She's my lawyer, Emma. Patricia retired, and Vivian's firm took over our legal affairs. That call you overheard was about a completely different contract, a business acquisition, but yes, I mentioned our timeline because I was trying to figure out. He stopped, running his hands through his hair. God, I've made a mess of this. Emma stared at him. What? The last 3 months have been the best of my life, Alexander said, his voice raw. Coming home to you and Ethan. Having breakfast together. Hearing you laugh. Watching you be the most amazing mother, the most amazing person I've ever known. You made me remember how to feel, Emma. You made me want things I thought I'd turned off forever. Then why did you pull away? Because I was terrified. He moved closer. This was supposed to be simple. A contract. A solution. And then you smiled at me, and Ethan called me uncle, and I realized I wanted this to be real. I wanted you to be my wife. Really my wife. And I had no idea if you felt anything for me or if I was just the means to having Ethan. You thought I was using you? I thought you were too good for me. Too kind and warm and alive for someone who spent a decade turning himself into ice. Alexander's hands trembled as he reached for her. I pulled away because I was trying to protect myself from the inevitable moment when you realized you'd settled. When you woke up and saw you were trapped with someone who didn't deserve you. You're an idiot, Emma whispered. I know. I love you. Not for your money or your house or even for Ethan, though I love him too. I love you. The man who learned to make terrible pancakes. Who reads bedtime stories in silly voices. Who tries so hard to be good when you're already so much better than you think you are. Alexander's hands cupped her face. I love you too. Somewhere between the awful pancakes and watching you dance in the kitchen with Ethan, I fell completely in love with my wife. And I want to tear up that contract and make this real. If you'll have me. Really have me. Forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough, Alexander whispered. And then he kissed her. It was soft and desperate and perfect. It was a promise and an apology and a beginning all at once. Emma melted into him, into this moment she dreamed about but never believed would happen. When they finally broke apart, they were both crying and laughing. Does this mean you're not taking the principal job in Seattle? Alexander asked. Emma pulled back. How did you? Margaret called me. She was worried about you and thought I should know. Emma, if that's what you want, I'll support you. We'll figure it out. Long distance or I could move the company. I don't want Seattle. I want this. You, me, and Ethan. This family we've built. A small voice from the doorway made them both turn. Are you and Uncle Alex married now? Like Sophie's parents? Ethan stood there in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed stegosaurus. Emma and Alexander looked at each other and laughed. Emma held out her hand. Come here, sweetheart. Ethan climbed onto the bed between them. Yes, Alexander said softly. Emma and I are married. If that's okay with you. Ethan looked between them seriously. Then he wrapped one arm around Emma and one around Alexander. Does this mean Emma stays forever? Forever and ever, Emma promised. Good. Ethan yawned. I love you both. We love you too, buddy, Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. They sat there, the three of them, holding each other as the sun set outside the windows. A family that had started as a contract and become something infinitely more precious. Real. Did you see this confession coming? Are you crying happy tears too? Tell us in the comments how you're feeling, and subscribe, we've got one more act to go. 1 year later. Emma stood in the garden behind their home, no longer a cold mansion but truly theirs, watching Alexander push Ethan on the swing set they'd installed last spring. The sound of her son's laughter, and yes, Ethan was her son now, officially, legally, in every way that mattered, filled the air like music. So much had changed. 6 months ago, they'd renewed their vows. Not a civil ceremony this time, but a real wedding with their friends and the entire kindergarten class Ethan had joined. Ethan had been the ring bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness. Margaret had cried through the entire ceremony. Even Patricia, before retiring, had dabbed at her eyes. Alexander had cried too, unashamed, when Emma had said her vows. The real ones, from her heart. I promise to love you in the chaos and the quiet. I promise to make terrible coffee and pretend your pancakes are edible. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your home. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. They'd honeymooned as a family, 2 weeks in Costa Rica where Ethan had found his first real fossil and Alexander had learned to surf, badly. Emma had never seen her husband so relaxed, so genuinely happy. When they'd returned, Alexander had made changes at Hunt Technologies. He'd promoted his VP to handle day-to-day operations and shifted his own role to part-time consulting. I spent a decade building a company, he'd said. I want to spend the rest of my life building a family. Emma had gone back to teaching, but only 3 days a week, at Meadowbrook Elementary. The other days she spent volunteering at a foundation she and Alexander had started together, providing resources for children who'd lost parents, and supporting single people trying to adopt. We know how broken the system is, Emma had said at the foundation's launch. We want to fix it. So every child can find their home, and every person who wants to love a child gets that chance. The foundation had already facilitated 12 adoptions. Each one felt like a piece of their own story coming full circle. Mama, watch this. Ethan called, pumping his legs to swing higher. Mama. He'd started calling her that 3 months ago, shyly asking if it was okay. Emma had cried happy tears and held him close. It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's perfect. She'd been nervous about how Alexander would feel, whether it would hurt, a reminder of the brother he'd lost. But Alexander had hugged them both. Jennifer would be honored, he'd whispered. And so am I. They'd made the adoption official last month. Ethan Chen, permanently and legally theirs. The caseworker who'd once been concerned about Alexander's capability had cried at the final hearing, telling the judge she'd never seen a more loving family. Lost in thought? Emma turned to find Alexander beside her, his arms slipping around her waist from behind. She leaned back into his warmth. Just thinking about how different everything is from that night in the parking lot. When I made the worst proposal in the history of proposals? Alexander's lips brushed her temple. I need a wife and you need a child, Emma quoted, laughing. So romantic. I was an idiot. If I could go back, I'd do it properly. Flowers, music, a speech about how I knew from the moment I saw you protect my nephew that you were the person I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. You're making up for it now. Emma turned in his arms. Every day, you make up for it. Alexander's expression grew serious. I have something for you. Another proposal, actually. Emma's breath caught as he pulled a small box from his pocket. But when he opened it, instead of a ring, there was a folded piece of paper. What is this? Read it. Emma unfolded the paper. It was the original contract they'd signed. The marriage agreement. The business arrangement. Alexander, why? He pulled out a lighter. 2 years ago, I asked you to be my wife because I needed a solution. Today, I'm asking you to stay my wife because you're my everything. I don't want a contract, Emma. I want a choice. Every day, I choose you. And I'm asking if you'll choose me too. He lit the corner of the paper. They watched together as it burned, the ashes scattering in the breeze. The last physical reminder of how they'd started, released. Yes, Emma whispered. Yes, I choose you. Today, tomorrow. And all the days after that, Alexander finished, kissing her softly. Uncle Alex. Emma. Come push me together. Ethan called. They walked hand in hand to the swing set, each taking a side. Ethan shrieked with delight as they pushed in tandem, his joy infectious. Later that evening, after Ethan was asleep, Emma and Alexander sat on their bedroom balcony, watching the stars. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been working at the Celestial that night? Alexander asked. Sometimes. But I think we would have found each other somehow. Some people are just meant to be. You believe in fate? I believe in second chances. Emma laced her fingers through his. You gave me a second chance at being a mother. At having a family. At love? You gave me a second chance at living, Alexander countered. I was alive, but I wasn't living. You taught me the difference. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Alexander spoke again, his voice careful. I've been thinking about something. And I want your honest opinion, no pressure. Okay? How would you feel about expanding our family? Emma's heart skipped. You mean? I've been talking to the foundation. There are so many kids who need homes. And we have so much love and space and resources. Alexander turned to her. I'm not saying we should immediately, or that we have to at all if you don't want to. But maybe in a year or two, we could adopt again? Give another child what we've given Ethan. Tears blurred Emma's vision. You want to adopt? I want to build the family we both dreamed of. Together. Alexander wiped her tears with his thumb. What do you think? I think, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion, that you're the most amazing man I've ever known. And yes, when the time is right, I'd love to grow our family. Alexander pulled her close, and they held each other under the stars, planning a future that had started with a cold contract and become the warmest dream. The next morning, at breakfast, Ethan made an announcement. I told Sophie that she could come over to play. And I said maybe she could have a sleepover because we have lots of bedrooms and you guys are good at taking care of kids. Emma and Alexander exchanged glances, trying not to laugh. Sophie's parents might have opinions about that, buddy, Alexander said diplomatically. But I also said maybe someday I could have a brother or sister. Could I? Emma's eyes widened. Ethan, were you listening to us last night? No. Ethan was suddenly very interested in his cereal. Maybe. A little. I was getting water and you were talking loud. Alexander sighed, but he was smiling. What do you think about maybe having a brother or sister someday? Ethan looked up, his gray eyes, so much brighter now than they'd been 2 years ago, serious and hopeful. I think I could teach them stuff. And share my toys. And be a good big brother like Daddy was. It was the first time Ethan had referred to Marcus that way. Not with pain, but with love and pride. Alexander's eyes glistened. Your daddy was the best big brother, Alexander said softly. And you'll be just like him. Will you tell me more stories about him? About Daddy and Mommy? Always, Emma promised. They'd made sure Ethan grew up knowing his parents, celebrating their memory while building their new family. It was a delicate balance, but an important one. That afternoon, Emma was in the kitchen when she heard voices from Alexander's office. She peeked in to see Ethan sitting on Alexander's lap, helping with work. And this number is the money? Ethan asked, pointing at the screen. That's the revenue projection, yes. That's a lot of money. You must be really smart. Your mama is smarter, Alexander said, and Emma could hear the smile in his voice. She knows all about teaching and children and making a house feel like home. That's worth more than any money. Is that why you married her? I married her because she has the kindest heart I've ever known. And because she makes me want to be better. And because she loves you, and me, exactly as we are. Do you love her? More than anything in the world. Except maybe you. It's a tie. Ethan giggled. You can love us both the same. There's enough. You're absolutely right, buddy. There's enough. Emma backed away quietly, her heart overflowing. That night, after they'd put Ethan to bed, Alexander found Emma in what had become her favorite spot, the reading nook she'd created in the library, surrounded by books and soft blankets. I have something for you, he said, sitting beside her. He handed her a leather journal. Emma opened it to find the first page filled with Alexander's precise handwriting. Ways Emma has changed my life. 1. She taught me that pancakes taste better when made with love, even if they're burned. 2. She showed me that coming home matters more than staying late at the office. 3. She helped me understand that being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's the bravest thing we can do. The list went on for pages. Moments Emma had forgotten or never known affected him. Small things and big things. Everyday miracles. Alexander. She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. I started writing this 6 months ago. I add to it whenever I realize another way you've made my life better. He took her hand. I'll probably fill 100 journals. Emma kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. Love, gratitude, joy, promise. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you too. My wife. My Emma. My home. And in that moment, in the house they'd filled with warmth and laughter, with the child they both loved sleeping safely upstairs, Emma knew she'd found everything she'd been searching for. Not in the desperate grab for what she'd lost, but in the brave choice to try again. Not in a cold contract, but in the warm reality of choosing each other, every single day. 2 years ago, a lonely teacher and a cold billionaire had made a deal. Today, a family sat together, built on love, strengthened by choice, and bound by something far stronger than any contract. Forever. 3 years later, epilogue. The social worker placed the sleeping infant in Emma's arms. Meet your daughter. Emma looked down at the tiny face, the rosebud mouth, the impossibly small fingers, and fell instantly in love. Beside her, Alexander's hand shook as he gently touched their daughter's cheek. She's perfect, he whispered. Can I see my sister? 6-year-old Ethan asked, practically vibrating with excitement. They sat together on the couch, all 4 of them, a family that had started with a proposal in a parking lot and grown into something beautiful. What should we name her? Emma asked. Hope, Ethan said immediately. Because you said hope is when you believe good things can happen even when everything seems dark. And she's our good thing. Emma and Alexander looked at each other, tears streaming down both their faces. Hope, Alexander agreed. Hope Hunchin. It's perfect. As Emma sat surrounded by her family, her husband, her son, her daughter, she thought back to that rainy night when a cold billionaire had offered her a contract. He'd said she needed a child. But what she'd found was so much more. She'd found a family. A purpose. A love that transformed them both. And that was worth more than any contract could ever define. So, dear readers, what did you think of Emma and Alexander's journey from a cold contract to a warm forever? Did their story touch your heart? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. Was it when Alexander first made terrible pancakes? When Ethan spoke his first words? The contract burning? Or the beautiful ending? And if this story made you believe in second chances and unexpected love, please subscribe so you never miss our next emotional journey. Your support means everything. Thank you for being part of Emma, Alexander, and Ethan's story. May we all find the courage to choose love, even when it comes in unexpected packages.